Happy Saturday and welcome back to the Sports Report. We got some good news and some bad news from the games last night. You want the good news or the bad news first?
Let's go good first. Let's start the morning off the right way.
It's good to start with the good news. The good news is that Sutton continues its undefeated streak. They're now 7-0 in the season and just a game away from capping that undefeated regular season, heading into the playoffs with a full head of steam. They got it done in a big fashion last night, 50-14 at the final.
50-14, and they certainly showed up to take care of business last night. I think the kids know what's on the line right now. Right now, you're kind of playing for seed position in the playoffs, and you know you welcome a 5-1 coming in 5-1. Their Central team that has been playing some pretty good ball games, other than a loss to Doniphan Trumbull. There's no reason to think that their Central wasn't going to come in here and give Sutton everything they had, and they did in many ways. So,
yeah, it was a little bit of a challenge for them, and wasn't a rollover by any means. But they got off to an early start and kind of cruised from there. We'll take a look at how that win happens. It was a lot of offense early for Sutton. After Brody Yost intercepted a pass on Thayer Central's first drive, Cole Wiseman scores the first touchdown on a 5-yard run. Trey Raymer converts on the 2-point try to give the Mustangs an 8-0 lead. 1 minute later, the Sutton defense forces a punt, but Tyler Bailey does one better and blocks it, setting up another touchdown drive that's finished by Trey Raymer on a 6-yard run. Mitch Carlson takes a pass in the flat and stretches across the goal line for the 2-point conversion, and Sutton's up 16-0 with 3:03 left in the first. Now in the second quarter, facing a 4th and goal at the 1, Wiseman punches it in. Not a pretty play, so we'll show you the 2-point play too. A halfback pass to a wide-open Yost to make it 24-0. Then, with seconds ticking away in the half, a long pass completion from Wiseman to Raymer sets up another score with 2 seconds left on the clock. Wiseman fakes a pass and keeps it himself to make it 30-0 at the break. When they returned for the second half, Sutton picked up where they left off as Yost grabs the opening kickoff, finds a lane, and runs it deep into Titan territory, giving the offense a short field to work with. Wiseman takes it from there, scoring on a 2-yard run. Raymer's conversion made it 38-0. Then Thayer Central showed signs of the offense that put up an average of 31 points entering the game, scoring on back-to-back possessions bridged by a successful onside kick. A great pass and catch here narrowed the score to 38-14. But that's as close as it would get, as Raymer would score 2 more touchdowns to seal the victory for the Mustangs and move the team's record to 7-0. Well, Thayer Central tried to make it interesting in the third quarter there. You could kind of see that offense that had put up so many points before this game start to click into gear, but fortunately for Sutton, that 30-0 halftime lead really kept them going and you know, pretty much had them cruise to a comfortable win.
Yeah, there were a lot of things I think that compounded the 30-0 first half scoring spree by Sutton. You know, I think the most fun play to watch in the first half, outside of the scoring drives and just the sheer grit that the Sutton boys had last night, was watching little Tyler Bailey block a punt there in the first quarter. I don't know what that was. I don't know if you call it a pirouette or whatever, but he kind of did a little spin and got the block. But you know, that set them up for their second touchdown after Wiseman went 5 yards in the first quarter. Raymer then you know, hit a 6-yard touchdown pass, and those two boys had darn good ball games last night.
They had some of those moments there. You talk about the block punts. They also had 2 fumble recoveries, 2 interceptions.
Robbie Kelly got a fumble recovery. Wiseman and Yost both had, or Wiseman and
Olsen.
Olsen had interceptions last night. Reed Stone had a fumble recovery. So, you know, it's just one of those things where Sutton's really put a mix of game plan together. Brody Yost has a huge kickoff return to start the second half. So, special teams, defensive play, offensive play, the line blocking, you know, there's just so many elements that Sutton has just put together this year that's really brought them to 7-0, going into a game that you got to feel pretty comfortable that Sutton's going to come away next Thursday night down at Superior with a win, considering, you know, Superior's struggled pretty bad this year.
Yeah, and, you know, Coach Steve Raymer, after last week's game, I just talked to him briefly, and he said, when they've got one thing working for them, they had their defense working for them in the St. Cecilia game. Their offense wasn't quite there. They got special teams play there that helped them out. But, when even just one of their aspects of that offense, defense, or special teams is working, they're a team that's hard to beat. But when all three are clicking like they were last night, it's scary.
Right. I think with the exception of maybe a 5-6 minute little stretch there in the third quarter after Yost's big return and then a touchdown there by, I think it was Wiseman there in the third quarter to cap that big return by Brody Yost to start the third quarter. The boys, they're driven, and you got three coaches that are very expecting of their kids. The kids know that. They know that if something goes wrong, they're gonna learn a little lesson from the coaches in a good way. And I think that the expectations from game one, that big win over Tri-County to start the year, to where they ended up last night, has really just compounded. And I think a lot of people going in, and I'll be honest with you, me going into the season, I was thinking 5-3, 6-2. Especially with that big stretch that they just got out of with St. Cecilia, Donovan, and now Thayer Central. The boys, they've proved themselves this year, and they're the real deal in a major way.
Yeah, and you mentioned before too. They're out of that tough stretch now. They've got you have to play every game, but they've got a team in Superior that hasn't won a game coming in. They've been what have they been outscored?
They've been outscored, and this is unfortunate, but they've been outscored 326-24 this year. Coming off a 36-7 loss to Blue Hill Friday night. Every school has its year, its down seasons and whatnot, and unfortunately Superior's going through that.
Yeah, just a couple years removed from that team beating Sandy Creek and Sutton. They had some talent there. Unfortunately, there's down here. Like you said, you got to play the game, so you got to expect these kids to show up and go out there and compete again. But
they'll be prepared.
It seems as though that this undefeated season is for the most part a lock, which is great for those kids. Also, something to look forward to next week is that. Cole Wiseman is just 35 rush yards unofficially shy of the 1,000-yard mark for the season. So we wish him luck in getting to that milestone. Nearly had it last night, but should be able to cap that.
We unofficially had Cole Wiseman 18 carries for 138 yards, and then I've called him the bullback all week or all year long between he and Mitch Carlson. But Trey Raymer had a huge night, 3 touchdowns. Well, Wiseman had 3 touchdowns as well. But Raymer runs the ball 29 times for 129 yards. Just the workhorse up the gut. So good job, boys. I mean, that was a huge win last night and well-deserving for you.
That's the good news. Unfortunately, there were 2 cases of bad news last night elsewhere in the county. We'll start with Harvard, who was looking to get above 500 again and keep their playoff hopes alive. They really needed that game last night. I had heard that that school had thought that if they won last night, then they would have been into the playoffs. Unfortunately, they were unable to come out with a win playing Franklin, and that drops them. So that should keep them out of the playoffs, unfortunately. But they're down a little bit. Looked like a couple kids might not have played for them, judging by the stat sheet. So.
Yeah, Harvard's got to have a lot of help, I think, at this point to get in the playoffs. 58-36 loss last night at Franklin, drops them to 3-4. Franklin came out, and not to use a little pun, but they just flew all over the place. And after 42-16 halftime lead, Harvard comes back and makes it somewhat respectable. Like I said, the 58-36 loss for Harvard. But on the bright side of the game, Colton Ives continued to have a strong night. He had 161 yards rushing on 24 carries. Franklin didn't let him complete a pass. He was 0 for 10, unfortunately. But not to make excuses or anything, and I know Coach Sam would never make an excuse, but they're awful banged up. It appears that Christian Martell was out last night with the concussion. I think he had some lingering effects. Obviously, I didn't see any stats on the sheet for Joshua McDowell. Those are 2 kids that are big playmakers. And
you still got Armando Morales, out too. So that's 3 big playmakers that they don't have.
And the unfortunate part is it gets no easier. They come in next week hosting Burning Davenport Shickley, BDS.
Very good team.
The only loss they've had all year is to Giltner, and I'm not sure who's going to beat Giltner this year. BDS beat Heartland last night 53-18. But you know what, boys? Show up, play, give it your all. You never know. I mean, there's still a slim chance out there. Although it is slim, just step on the field and
absolutely, you got to compete all the time.
Yeah, you got to compete.
You know, who knows? Superior could take down Sutton, Harvard could take down BDS. You know, anything could happen in these games.
You got to play it, put the game on the field and play it.
Yeah, and then we'll travel a little bit further south to Sandy Creek. They were on the road against Wilburg-Latonia, suffered a 34-7 loss, and they missed their attempt for their 4th straight win. And a chance for them to get over 500 again and keep their bid for the playoffs alive. And so another loss there that hurts them. It looks like they were also down on a couple of players. Right. We don't see Anthony Gracer's name on the stat sheet or quarterback Mitch Hinrichs on the stat sheet, so must have had a couple of things happen there where they couldn't play. Anyways, that resulted, when you lose 2 key components of your offense, it resulted in just 150 yards of total offense, and that's awful tough to score points and get drives going when that only happens with 9 first downs. You know, just 81 net rushing yards on 29 carries, just 2.79 yards a carry.
61 of those yards comes from one kid. You know, Matt Beck stepped up, had 61 yards on 12 carries. That's a tough loss. You know, I mean, Sandy Creek was already looking at a tough way to get into the playoffs, and I think this kind of, for the most part, probably has sealed the deal and probably is going to keep them out of the C1 playoffs this year. Yeah,
that's tough when you get your established offense and then you mix it up here without Gracer and Hinrichs back there.
Right.
Blake Skolot filled in for Hinrichs, it looks like, a quarterback. Had 1 pass touchdown connected to Austin Nackey. That was their lone touchdown on the game. Other than that, it just kind of seemed like, you know, things just didn't click entirely. They did turn the ball over 4 times. They did get 3 turnovers. Matt Beck and Tanner Cooler, I guess. Yeah. Both had interceptions, and Dwayne Colburn had a fumble recovery. So defense worked a little bit, but just not enough to get a whole lot going there.
I'm sure that's a tough pill to swallow. You know, you really needed this win to give yourself the chance to get in the playoffs, just because you were going to get some good points from a win like that. You know, going in, they were at 3, even at 3-3, they were kind of in the bottom level points wise. So that's a tough loss for the Cougars, unfortunately.
It is, yeah, and you got a Wilburg-Latonia team that put up 319 yards of total offense, you know, doubling what Sandy Creek's offensive production was. They had them up 27-0 at half, so it's really awful tough to claw back from that when you get down like that. So a couple of cases of bad news, 1 case of real good news. I guess that's how it goes some weeks. We'd love to have 3 wins every week, but that's just not always in the cards.
Right.
I guess that's it for us here this week. As always, stay tuned for full coverage in our print edition and so much more. We'll be back next week. Let's see, we're trying to figure out how we can do this live in Superior on the scene. We'll see if we can do that. If not, we'll be back in studio next week.
Sutton's down at Superior Thursday night, and then Sandy Creek and Harvard are both home Friday night. Cougars have Fillmore Central coming in, and Harvard has, as I said earlier, BDS coming in. Going to be a busy week. Stay tuned for us,
we should be able to get to all 3 of those games, and
we'll be at all 3
with the Thursday-Friday split. That'll help. So yeah, I guess we'll see you next week.
Have a great one.